Hi, I'm Francesco Gennari, and today I'm going to play a track I composed, drawing on the concepts of cross FM, faking polyphony, and the creative use of mutes. And later I'll do a patch breakdown showing all the modules and techniques I used. Starting with Usta. This is what directly or indirectly controls everything happening in the patch, from volt per octave controls, sending clock, to modulating parameters. I've set the clock high to have more freedom in choosing rhythmic figures and to create very small ones if needed, or to do slight difference in the various stage lengths. This is because Usta works with stages rather than steps. And by editing the length of these stages, it's possible to create very varied sequences. The first three tracks control the free voice of the patch, while the fourth one does a voltage sequence that modulates the FM deviation of the green oscillator of Brenso. It sends the clock to a section of Sapel and acts like a mute for an effect, which I'll explain in more detail later. In the first track, which controls Brenso, I've created a loop of 4 patterns. To do this, you enter performance mode by pressing the button with the pencil. Then, by holding Shift and rotating the encoder, you can choose which patterns to end the loop with. I also write a 5th pattern, which I only activate in the final part of the track, in this way. In the second track, which controls the bass, I wrote an additional CV sequence that modulates the pitch of track number 3, which controls the Piston Honda. I send the CVB out, into the CVA input of Usta. and I select into the menu of track number 3 the pitch shift A on CVA. This is to ensure that the third voice, which has a single sequence pattern, can follow the harmonic variation present in the fourth pattern of the first voice. As I said, the first voice of this patch, the main one, is made with Brenso. The two oscillators of Brenso are tuned to each other, and the volt per octave is sent to both thanks to the integrator circuits. One of the parts I like the most of this module is being able to put the two oscillators in cross FM. I decided to use it in cross FM because it gives me more abrasive and unstable sonic results. However, since both oscillators are set to the same frequency, the pitch stays stable, which works well as this is the main melodic line of the track. And since they are semi-normalized to each other, in this case, I only externally modulate the FM deviation, meaning the amount of modulation being applied to the oscillator. I use the pulse shaper output, and what we hear from this output is made by the transformation of the original waveform. The triangle wave passed through the triangle shaper, which feeds the comparator, deriving a pulse wave that finally goes into the pulse shaper. This can be heard from the square out by setting the switch below the jack on the right. Modify these two parameters with Sapel and the final result is this. Now the low pass gate is fully open. And now I also do some FM. The shaped pulse goes into the Doppler low-pass gate. A technique I almost always use with this low-pass gate is to take advantage of both CV input, sending a gate signal directly from Usta in CV1, while using a signal like sample and hold or something similar in CV2. In this way, you can hide certain notes that are not triggered by the gates, but can only be heard when the sample and hold manage to open the low-pass gate. Another voice is the bass. It is structured very simple. A triangle wave generated by the yellow section of Falistri passing through the SAM VCF and then going directly into the QSC mixer. It's very stable, but I added a slight vibration by modulating the VCF frequency using a fluctuating random voltage out from Sapel. Then we come to the third voice of the track. In this case, I wanted something more percussive that would stand out in the overall mix. And I use Piston Honda, where the two oscillators are slightly detuned, but follow the same volt per octave and are in cross FM with each other. The starting wave I selected is a slightly dirty square wave, which I modify by modulating the x-axis of the wavetable with the n+1 output of Sapel. And from the screen we can see clearly the effect of the modulation. I use the mix out of Piston Honda, where both oscillators can be heard at the same time, and the signal goes into the Optomix. While I was writing the track, I tried to open the Optomix directly with the gate out from the track 3 of Usta. But in this way the effect was too sharp and I wanted something with more decay. But I had run out of envelope, so I threw off using the slew limiter of Falistri to stretch the tail of the gate and get a softer decay. This one is without the slew limiter. And in this way I added more decay. The two sections of Sapel are clocked differently, because this way I can create interesting rhythmic interlocks that do not necessarily follow the main clock of what they are modulating. For example, something faster or slower, or that creates a polyrhythm, but in any case, something that doesn't make the track too static. In this patch, I used 3 different effects: the Multi Delay Processor, the Desmodus Versio, and the Empress Reverb. There is also a sort of string section. I send the final output of Brenso to the Multi Delay Processor by Verbos and use the Mixes Outs preset because I want a stereo signal with some pan movement within it. And this is how it sounds when it's fully open. In addition to the stereophonic effect, this delay creates note overlaps that make the sound very dense and help produce a fake polyphony effect. Fake because there is only one voice as sound source. This occurs both when used as a string and as a pad, like we've just heard. But my intention is to achieve a sound more similar to a single bow stroke. So I use the green channel of Falistri to generate an envelope with a very slow attack and decay to open and close the VCA, which I can control directly from the QSC mixer, in this case in channel number 4. Part of this effect is also created thanks to the octaver of the multi-delay processor, and the wobble effect is created with one of the envelope follower, which I patch into the CV input of the delay time, opening the attenuator just a little. At the same time, I use one of the single tap output routing into one of the modules input to create a feedback loop. At the end of the track, by changing patterns on the sequencer, I can fully open the VCA of the QSC channel using a sequence of gates that are always present for the entire duration of the stage and across all the stage of the sequencer. In this way, the envelope created with the Falistri is always active. The main reverb I use is the Empress Reverb, and in this case I'm using the room algorithm. To send the signal to the pedal, I use one of the 2 sends on the QSC. In this way, I can control and adjust the amount of the signal for each channel, even during the performance, using the dedicated knob. Another effect I use at the end of the track is the Desmodus Versio by Noise Engineering. I wanted to create an additional reverb layer that generates a wide and diffuse atmosphere. I then use the other send on the mixer, on Brenso and string channel, to send the signal to the Desmodus. By adding it only at the end, I wanted to have direct and quick control over when to bring it in, like a mute button, but all the channels on the QSC mixer were already in use. So I send the output of the Desmodus to a channel of Optomix, and the low pass gate opening is controlled by a gate coming from track 4 of the Usta. I create a sequence of continuously present gates, like I do for the string section, that remains muted directly on the sequencer until I unmute the gate, allowing the reverb to be heard. For mute and unmute gates, CVs or tracks in Usta, you have to press ESC and then press the gate or the CV or the track that you want to mute. I then send the output of the Optomix into the auxiliary mono input on the QSC. In addition to what was already mentioned about the QSC, I use mute button a lot during the performance. I really enjoy their position, which allows me to comfortably press more than one at the same time, like I do in the last part of the track. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to reach out in the comments or on the Fraptools Discord for a deeper discussion. Bye!